Hello. Pardon me. Getting a little bit of a late start this evening. If you're watching this later on YouTube, I appreciate you giving this a look-see. Recording it live on Twitch just so I can continue to get some Twitch hours, Twitch practice. Hopefully we'll maybe get some viewers in chat and ask a few questions, and we'll talk about that stuff soon. If you are new to this channel, I am Tree0311. It's Tree0311, but 0311 was my 0311. We say 0311. That was my MOS when I was an infantry marine many years ago, along with 0331. It's rifleman, and then 0331 was machine gunner. So yeah, that's where the nickname comes from. This channel is largely about Star Citizen because that is my sort of passion. It's my hobby. It's what I'm really interested in. If you haven't seen it yet, we host the Pathfinders podcast on this channel, and basically my goal here is to host podcasts with people within the community in order to talk about Star Citizen and its development. I've been doing the Pathfinders podcast for over 6 months now, and but also I'm going to be doing gameplay streams, especially highlighting things that I pick up from the community, hints, tips, tricks. Hopefully doing some guide streams as well, helping new players get situated and figure out how to play the game, as well as Zero to Hero stuff. And then I am in Astropub, Paul Shelley's org called Lore, League of Relic Enthusiasts. So we'll be doing some streams with the other members of the Lore org and doing lots of relic and artifact hunting. That belongs in a museum, our museum. So tonight I am recording and starting something that I'm going to be doing regularly. Hopefully should be able to get it out every week. Got to feed that YouTube algorithm as I get started. But what I'm going to call this is Lore equals Gameplay. If you are here, you are probably here because you may have. There's a high likelihood that you have talked with me over in the Astropub Discord. You may have seen me on Captain's Table or heard me on the Lore Citizen podcast over on Astropub and Astro Historian on YouTube. If you haven't given those channels a follow or checked out Paul's content, I highly suggest you do so. He puts out really good content, lots of really good information, both within Astropub as well as Astro Historian, which is his dedicated lore channel. And this is not to cramp on Paul's style. Paul and Algrid over at Info Runners and Jail, who are the OGs for the Lore Citizen podcast that Paul does, they are the big time lore gurus, especially because Paul and Algrid are actual history teachers. Like, they are trained and educated in how to understand particularly all these sociological aspects of history. And our lore is that we have in game, a lot of it is actual just a writing of the history of the Star Citizen universe, from basically present time toward the future. But because what Nazarus and I do on Pathfinders podcast, we do deep dives into the development of Star Citizen, whether it's elements of gameplay, the design of ships, the way that they're going about developing the back-end technology, all sorts of different things where we have tons of information, but it's really hard to source and make sense of. What Nazarus and I do in that channel is we go through and find all the information, find all the citations, and present it to you in order to, for you to be more informed. Well, this Lore equals Gameplay segment is meant to sort of corroborate or work maybe even cooperatively with what Nazarus and I do. I'm a huge fan of the lore. That's why I'm active in the Astropub Discord. But if Paul and Al are the professors of the lore, at a university in Retor, which is the system in Star Citizen where, like, a lot of there's basically the planets are covered in universities. It's an educational hub. If they're the professors there, I'm like a sophomore year lore major in Star Citizen. I've read all of it. I've read most of it multiple times, but I'm an infantry marine and a paramedic and flight paramedic. So while I have a good amount of education, it is certainly not my specialty to interpret all the sociological things or to be familiar with the influences that a lot of the lore comes from, because a lot of it does have connotations and context that you better understand if you're a historian or someone who teaches history and social studies. There's all sorts of things where, oh, this is basically the 27th century version of this, or this is similar to that. And that's where those guys specialize. Where I specialize, or where I want to specialize, is, hey, here's a piece of lore, here's a piece of information that the narrative team is giving us, and how is it relevant to the gameplay that is being developed. And that's why we are here tonight, to record these two segments. The first one is going to be, we're going to go ahead and read through the Spectrum Dispatch post called Booty Call Dumb Luck. That was from September 20th, 2022. So if you're watching this way later, it was September 20th, 2022. We're going to read through that, and we are going to dissect it in order to find the pieces that are most likely to be relevant to gameplay that is being developed, or ways, information that'll be pertinent to how you play the game. Some information is just filler, sort of sets the tone, makes things interesting. And some of it, when you read it, especially if you're familiar with other, the rest of the lore, or the way that the Star Citizen universe is laid out, you can read it and you're like, oh, I see where this is going. And they're not laying things out specifically in order to say this is how it will be, but it's in order to provide influence for the gameplay designers in order to put things into the game that make things interesting, that spice it up. So what we're going to do is we're going to transition to and by the way, this is what I'm calling my command center. You can't see both my hands. This is the Trio through 11 command center, and this is what you'll be seeing whenever I stream before I go in game or something like that. So let's go ahead and pull this lore up. We're going to transition into the chatting with Windows screen, is what I call that scene. So that way, as I'm recording this and people are watching it later, they can see anything going on in chat, and they can also see what I am looking at, what I'm reading, and then also see my unshaven face. I definitely need to trim this up a little bit. Been pretty busy doing the dad and the husband thing. So let's get started. All right. So here is Booty Call, and these are under Spectrum. Here, if you go to Comlink, if you want to see the lore pieces, you go to Comlink, Spectrum Dispatch, and then they have all these different things. I usually just search all. But the Spectrum Dispatch will have basically all the lore stuff in it, whether they're the Galactopedia updates or fiction written by the narrative teams. There's so much cool information in here. But it's the Spectrum Dispatches that have all the lore, along with the where is it? The Galactic Guides have lore on the, you can Ghost 1800. You could spend days in there at this point, and literally, I have spent days in there. When I was deployed in 2020 over in Afghanistan, I was on lockdown due to COVID. Super sweet. It was like a prison sentence in Afghanistan. And basically, I was stuck in my room, unless there was a mission or mission essential tasks to get done. I was watching all the YouTubes about Star Citizen and rereading all the lore, whether it's the jump points or all of these things. I basically went from all the way back to the beginning and read my way forward over several months. Um, the I thought it was in here. Serialized fiction. There we go. The serialized fiction has a lot of lore as well, and these are the ones that there's multiple sort of episodes of them, and these ones are storytelling. They are fiction written. They are usually fiction written within the verse. Some of them, it's hard to know whether they are in-verse fiction or if they are fiction about the verse. But there's a lot of really great stories in here, really good reading. Most of these are from jump points long gone by. But let's get back to Booty Call. But yeah, some of these are really great. Instrument of Surrender is one of my favorites. The ones about Cal Mason are phenomenal. Let's get back to Booty Call, though. So Booty Call is the context of Booty Call, and all these sort of episodic things that the narrative team writes, because there's been many episodes of Booty Call prior to this, but these are Booty Call in particular is, and all these things, when they say Spectrum Dispatch, it's basically like a blog post or some of them are they're things that are posted onto Spectrum, which is like the 30th century Star Citizen universe version of the internet. And some of them are written like blog posts. Some of them are written as if they are like a television show. And some of them are written as if it's like a podcast interview style thing. Booty Call actually is, the author is a pirate, and he's basically gone to like a comm relay, hacked his way into Spectrum in order to broadcast his series that he does. And so it's whether it's written or audio, it doesn't matter. It's this guy hacking in there in order to get his message out. It's sort of a pirate version of You Can't Stop the Signal, Mal, from Firefly. So you can see that's what this little text is about. It's him hacking in there in order to broadcast. Yeah, it's literal pirate broadcasting. Yep. Yeah, he's jacking his way in. So let's go ahead and read this, and then as we get towards the juicier bits, we'll sort of dive into what makes those important, and then I'm going to actually take us over to the Ark Starmap to sort of highlight the potential that these statements, these things that are being said, could have on the gameplay, the way the verse is laid out. So, all right, listen up, you jackholes. I get that in our line of swindling, thieving, and general law breaking, there's a lot that can go wrong. So believe me, I understand why pirates do these weird little things that they think will bring them good luck. On the low, if a pirate tells you luck's never been a factor in their success, they're either lying to you or selling you something. But things are getting out of hand, and I'm one asinine superstition away from losing my cool. It's starting to seem like pirates across the verse are competing for the crown of stupidest superstition. And if they are, I think I found our champ. Some numbskull by the name of Not a Boon, and I take umbrage with this because my son's name is Boone. But Not a Boon got his ship knocked around so bad near Orson, he had to land for repairs at Port Olisar, where, of course, Crusader Security, was waiting. He got pinched and shipped off to Klesher. I'm sure you're wondering what old Boone was up to that put him in this position. Did he get too greedy with the target, trying to pull a job way out of his league? Nope. He was trying to fly alongside a herd of storm walls. No, you're not hallucinating. Those were words that came out of my mouth. Somehow Nada got it in his head that since some folk think spotting storm walls is a good omen, then it must be even luckier to fly alongside them. But Nada had a problem. Each time he tried to get close with his ship, the storm walls would dip below the cloud wall, which, makes a lot of sense. When a wild animal sees a massive ship flying towards them, their first thought isn't, hey, a friend. But Nada wasn't going to take no for an answer, so he kept trying until the flock, are groups of storm walls flocks? Herds? Whatever a bunch of storm walls are called, messed up Nada's ship defending themselves from this creeper. Usually, I find this kind of stupidity funny, but ever since word of Nada's arrest spread, I'm hearing about new idiotic superstitions popping up every day. Now, look, I know pirates aren't known for being the sharpest skiffs, but now I'm losing confidence that most of you lot can even tell the blasting side of a gun from the grip. I'm sure that some of you are saying, oh, Jester, that's the name of the author. That's just one dumb shipjacker. That ain't all of us. Well, you know the saying. It only takes one bad weld to scuttle a ship. These morons aren't doing the rest of us any favors. Is all I'm getting at. This isn't a recent thing either. I've been hearing stories like this for ages. Another example. Tell me why I keep hearing about pirates avoiding Banu ships. Seems some packs have gotten it into their heads that you should never rob Banu ships, or else Casa, the patron of luck in the Banu religion, will be upset with you. Is this really the kind of thing we're concerning ourselves with? I'd be worried about the advocacy swooping in there, being a merc team waiting to drop an ambush after a breach, then buying into alien religions. I've been hearing some crews clapping back and saying that the whole Banu thing only applies to your first target, and after setting out, and that everything after that first is fair game, as if that's somehow more reasonable. You're criminals, damn it! If you see a good target, you take it. So, the talking about the flying up alongside the storm walls. I imagine we are going to be taking the Crusader tours out to view the storm walls on Crusader. I imagine some players will be flying around in Crusader, the gas giant itself, trying to get pictures of storm walls. They've even talked about harvesting things from them, maybe some scraping some sort of barnacles or stuff. They've had pictures of that. But that's the way they're writing it. That is just, this is setting the tone along with the Banu thing. They're setting you up for what's coming later, and the next couple bits is where the real meat and potatoes of this lore piece is. Look, I'm not against a little pre-flight ritual or something. I'm not ashamed to admit I wore the same Lido's t-shirt for 6 jobs in a row. But the point is, the job still came first. What's it going to take for us to step back and think about all the ridiculous things we're doing in the name of a little luck? When did we start caring more about this dung than making a profit? Another one that people keep banging on about comes from Pyro, where apparently some gangs will even change their plans based off how the solar flares emit. If it's a single burst flare, it's a bad omen, and so the gang buckles down and doesn't pull jobs. But if it's two bursts, then luck's on your side and they all rush out at once. What if it's 3? Are you supposed to call mom? There's a part of me that hopes that one of the smarter packs out there probably started this rumor, just so they know that when there's a single flare, all the gullible gangs won't be roving out there and competing with them for targets. What really boggles me is that this isn't even limited to smaller no-names. I've heard that there are packs in the Nova Riders that think you should never wear gear on the same trip you looted it, or the spirit of the previous wearer will bring you luck. And again, we're back to the fluff. Really, in my opinion, the meat and potatoes is this stuff right here. And just to remind you, these are supposed to be some of the most feared raiders out there. Sad thing is, this tried to spread so fast, I wouldn't be surprised if me just talking about some of this nonsense hasn't convinced some of you it's worth a try. I swear, if I hear any idiot trying the Stormwall thing after this, I'll hire someone to ghost them. Ghosting is when you destroy someone's ship and you literally you blow up their escape pod, or if they eject, you shoot them. That's way old lore from way back. Hell, maybe even do it personally and send a comm before I blow them to bits, just to give them the Inept Outlaw of the Year award and thank them for doing a service to the reputation of pirates everywhere by dying. We don't need Crusader calling a crackdown on pirates because their beloved space whales are being bothered. And I don't know about you, but I don't want any of the eco-terrorist lunatics on our backs either. Hopefully, the next time Booty Call is back, some of you will have your heads on straight. Jester out. So let's go back up to that piece of information that I think is pretty pertinent. Let's see, right here. Another one that people keep banging on about comes from Pyro, where apparently some gangs will even change their plans based off how the solar flares emit. If it's a single burst flare, it's a bad omen, and so the gang buckles down and doesn't pull jobs. But if it's 2 bursts, then luck's on your side and they all rush out at once. What if it's 3? Are you supposed to call mom? There's a part of me that hopes that one of the smarter packs out there probably started this rumor just so they know. Pardon me, hiccup. just so they know that when there's a single flare, all the gullible gangs won't be roving out there and competing with them for targets. So if you're not savvy on the lore of Pyro, Pyro is obviously it's a if you've heard the name, you've probably heard that it is a lawless system controlled by gangs and pirates. And the gangs and pirates have territories. And right now, Xenothreat, who you're probably familiar with if you play Star Citizen, controls Ruin Station. And Ruin Station is the largest station in Pyro. It's left over. The old lore is that Ruin Station was a terraforming support station back when Pyrotechnic Amalgamated, I think it was a company, was basically they didn't own the system, but they were the ones exploiting the resources, and they were looking to try and terraform planets within Pyro, namely Pyro 3, most likely. And so that's why Ruin Station is left. There's other stations within Pyro because the stations were built in order to support the different mining operations that were going on in there, because there was a lot more resources to mine for Pyro back in the day during the sort of mining rush, gold rush that occurred after it was discovered. But those individual stations are now, they were abandoned by their owners a long time ago, and they've been taken over by pirate gangs. And that's essentially where those stations are. We don't know where they are, but those stations are sort of the bases of the individual gangs' pirate operations. And from there, that's how the pirates, this station is over here, this station is over here, here's your territory, here's their territory, and so on across the Pyro system. And if you can sort of imagine, unfortunately, the Ark Starmap right now doesn't show us where the Lagrange points are for the different planets within a star system like it does in Stanton in game. But we just by knowing, how the Lagrange points work, you can sort of guess where they are. And we don't know if there are other low orbit stations within Pyro, low orbit being the ones like Everest Harbor by Genie Point and Port Tressler and Port Olisar. We don't know if there are any low orbit stations around any of the planets or moons, but we can assume that based off of what is written in the progress tracker about the Pyro space stations, that there's at least the sort of support stations, like the ones that we have at our Lagrange points now for the R&R stations with refineries and other infrastructure. We can assume that there are at least some of those there, and that's where the pirates are based out of. So let's take a look at the Ark Starmap, and we'll sort of illustrate this point about how the impact from the burst, flare, superstition, ones and twos. Let's see. So if it's a single burst flare, it's a bad omen and the gang buckles down. But if it's two, then luck's on your side and they all rush out at once. So let's go take a look at Pyro real quick. We're going to enter the Ark Starmap. Enter window mode to start out. If you haven't played around with the Ark Starmap, I highly recommend it. There is just a wealth of good information in here, but also a lot of really handy tools. And so what we're going to do is, first, let's go ahead and search for Pyro. And we want the Pyro star system. That's where we're going to be going. And so it automatically zooms you in, but we're going to zoom back out because here's Pyro. And here's the Stanton system right here. And these are the jump tunnels for the different jump points. And so we can turn this off, turn that off. And so we've turned off small and large. And we can see that the jump point from Stanton to Pyro and from Pyro to Nyx those are both medium jump points, medium jump tunnels. But what you can also do is there's a route planner tool. And so you can say, okay, I want to go from Ark Core, which would be the major production hub within Stanton as far as producing goods. You're going to get lots of goods out of Hurston, ships, weapons out of Hurston, ships out of Crusader, lots of pieces of tech, particularly for individual player use out of Microtech. Um, but Arcor, there are a bunch of corporations there. Gemini that makes guns, they're there. Arcor themselves, they make components like power plants. So they're going to be shipping, and it's a huge planet with tons of industry. So they're going to be shipping a ton of stuff out, and maybe you want to, maybe you want to take a shortcut. You're trying to get. If we turn these, oops, let's go back to the air display. One of the routes that's talked about in lore, and it's basically the way it's talked about. It's almost like the Kessel run in Star Wars. The Stanton to Castra run is a very substantial trade route because Castra also has a ton of industry and demand for resources as well as finished goods because of the commercial and industrial boom that happened on Cascom, the main habitable planet in Castra, and the city of Sherman after the end of the Geon War. So it's actually talked about. They say that the Stanton to Castra run is a big deal. But if you go via basically safe route, you'd be going from from Arcor and Stanton to Terra to Hadrian to Castra. And last time I checked, I want to say that was like a 93 AU trek because you can use the route planner to go from Arcor all the way to Cascom. So you've got 1, 2, 3 jumps and 93 AU worth of travel across systems. Or the route from Stanton to Castra, because of where the jump points are placed, is actually shorter if you go Stanton, Pyro, Nyx, Castra. And it's actually the Stanton to Castra run is mentioned in the Nyx lore. You could go Stanton, Pyro, Oso, Castra. But if I remember correctly, the jump point from Oso to Castra is a small jump point. So if you're in a ship that needs a medium jump point to get from Stanton to Castra via the Pyro via the Pyro Stanton to Pyro jump point, you wouldn't be able to go to Oso and then jump through there. You'd only be able to take small ships. The other thing is Oso is a developing system, so there are UEE Navy patrols there guarding the system, preventing it from being contaminated by human presence because there's a sentient species, the Osoians, that live on one of the planets there. So you can't go through Oso. So you're either going the long way around. That's also going to have a whole lot of traffic at the different jump tunnels from Stanton to Terra to Hadrian to Castra, or you're going to take the shorter route from Stanton to Pyro to Oso, or sorry, Stanton to Pyro, Nyx to Castra. And if I remember correctly, this was like 42 AU, that route, Stanton, Pyro, Nyx, Castra, and the Stanton, Terra, Hadrian Castra was like 92 AU. So it saves you like 50 AU of travel distance, which is nothing to sneeze at, especially if you're in a medium, a ship that would fit in a medium, through a medium jump point. And so we can assume that that's at least an Idris or smaller, based off of Idris's coming and going from Xenothreat in and out of that jump point. But we don't know if anything larger. So, maybe your whole D's and your whole E's could make that jump, but you could take ships up to maybe a whole C in size. We're not quite sure. But let's look at that route real quick. So routes, Arcor to Cascom, planet in Castra. And we want medium jump point because we're going to take this route. Stanton to Pyro, Pyro to Nyx, Nyx to Castra. Yeah, Ghost 1800. Shortcuts always seem to involve solar flares, neutron stars, and other fun times. Yeah, basically, if there's a shortcut, it's because there's a hazard in the way. Like with the Kessel run, I can't remember the name of that nebula thing that they flew through. I remember you got to see it in, was that Star Wars Rebels that they flew through it? Um, I know there was in one of the cartoons they did it, and I want to say it was Rebels. Um, I don't remember. I don't remember what the nature of the uh, and Ghost 1800 says the black hole place in Solo, and now that I think of it, I can't remember what it was, what that phenomenon was. It made it dangerous. I can't remember what it was, and I'll have to go back and look. But it's basically a dangerous shortcut to to get from one place to another, and it can save you a ton of time, and it's great for smugglers because the law avoids it, which would also be a good thing in this run. But the way that it's sort of mentioned in the Nyx lore is it's sort of similar because there isn't a natural a dangerous phenomenon, but you do have to go through Pyro to get there. And then Nyx also has we'll actually go through there as well. Nyx also has a nebula that is basically like intertwined with the Glacium ring, which is a massive asteroid belt, kind of like the Air Halo within Nyx. So you click calculate, Arc core to Cascom, medium jump point. So it'll give us this route. Let's see. And yeah, because there's also the other thing is there's also the medium jump point from Stanton to Pyro, and then a large jump point from Pyro to Castra. And you're like, okay, well, um, why wouldn't you take that route if there's a large jump point and it takes you right there and you don't have to go through Nyx? Because it's actually longer. There's two jumps, so 1, 2. It's actually longer because of where the jump points are in Pyro along that route. And so it's actually shorter to go through the extra jump, shorter by 18 AU, which is, again, nothing to sneeze at. That's, almost 4 times the distance across Stanton. But you can also imagine that if there's a large jump point going from Pyro to Castra, that pirates are going to be all over that. And you'll see why here in a second. So let's do this route through the 3 jump, which will take us through Pyro to Nyx. So here's your departure, leaving Arc Core, headed to the Stanton Pyro jump point. You can see that the Pyro jump point, the jump point from Pyro in Stanton, is actually within the interior of the Stanton system in the green zone. Basically splits the difference between Arc Core and Crusader. And then Microtech's over here on the other side, Hurston's right there. And then so you can just advance along through the jumps. So it'll take you through the jump point from the Pyro to Stanton jump point, and you'll pop out right here. And it's actually pretty far out in the system. You can see that this is the green zone in here, the green band. And then here's Pyro 5 right here, which is the gas giant. It has like 6 moons around it. And then Pyro 4 is the planetoid that is slowly being pulled into Pyro 5. And if you remember from the CitizenCon presentation, they showed you like an image with all the moons around Pyro 5, so the concept art for them. But here's Pyro 6. That's like the one planet they didn't show us at CitizenCon, if I remember correctly. They didn't show you hardly any information for it. But Pyro 6 is also where Ruin Station is. And so you can see the proximity from Ruin Station to the Pyro to Castra jump point. So you're probably not going to want to use this jump point because Xenothreat is right there, and pirates are going to be coming and going from that main hub station, depending on their reputation with Xenothreat, and probably a lot of attacks going into Castra. I bet when we get the Castra system, which is probably going to be the next one after Nyx, we'll see Xenothreat in Castra as well, or at least lots of pirate attacks. Yeah, I wonder how many Idrises they have parked there. That's a good question because it's hard to wonder. You have to wonder how many Idrises could Xenothreat have. Being that a lot of them are ex-military, they would know. That they probably have information about the moth, the sort of mothball fleets. Where the decommissioned Idrises are before they get, retrofitted and sold as Idris Ps. Um, you know, or ones that are damaged and they keep them for spare parts. Probably would have lax security around them. I bet that's where they're getting some of their Idrises and why maybe they're not as tough as they would like them to be. But you can imagine that having a lot of prior military in your organization would give you a bit of an edge when it comes to getting surplus or decommissioned Navy ships that have just been left parked out in the void of space with a few automated turrets and an occasional patrol to guard them. But so yeah, you're not going to cross from here to there. You're just going to see all sorts of pirate activity around here. And if you're trying to make a cargo run from Ark Core to Cascom, and you're trying to save some time and money by taking the shorter but dangerous route, you're going to go through the next jump point because it is in fact shorter. And the reason it's shorter, so you're like, well, it looks like it's closer, but it's not actually. So the jump point is actually way out here, but because it's below the ecliptic and on the opposite side of the system, this going across this way and then going from this jump point to Cascom, because Castra itself is 22 AU, this actually makes it a longer route. And if you're going through Nyx, there is less pirate activity in Nyx. There's still pirate activity there, but it's also because of the nebula and the asteroid fields. You also have the more opportunity to get through there safely, or to lose people coming after you. Yeah, Ghost 1800 says, "Oh, good, they'll be doing some stuff off the orbital planes," and that's the thing that I think a lot of people miss is a lot of the default views, especially if you are looking at the star map. I forget what the button is, but you can go between 2D and 3D mode. This being 3D, and so whoops, not what I meant to do. No. Oh, let's get back to our route. But you can see that there's the Pyro to Oso jump point, the Pyro to Hadrian jump point, and they're all well off the ecliptic. And what else is interesting is not all the planetary orbits are on the same ecliptic. Why, if that's intentional, I don't know. But you can see that Pyro 5, the gas giant, has a different ecliptic orbit, or a different orbit relative to the ecliptic. I think the ecliptic would be the whoops. I think the ecliptic would be relative to the, you can see the green band like that. That would be the ecliptic. But so you can see that both the orbits are off of the ecliptic. But you also have lots of jump points that are all over the place relative to the ecliptic. And so you can be like, oh, okay, well, Pyro is 13 AU across, so that would be like 15 AU. No, it's actually longer. You can see it's 19.72 AU to make that jump from here to there. And the other good thing is, yeah, you have to come through the jump point, which might be guarded. We're going to have to wait and see if there's pirates patrolling it. But because the jump point is so far away from any of the planets, it's unlikely to be someplace where pirates loiter, just because there's not going to be any sort of infrastructure there. Your Lagrange point stations are going to be parked essentially at Lagrange points that were beneficial to the mining operations and those of Pyrotechnic Amalgamated at the time. And so, like, you'll have I want to say it's Lagrange point 1 and 2 for Pyro 5 here, and then 3 would be over here, and then it's like 4 and 5. You can look at images of how Lagrange points are laid out relative to planetary bodies and then just apply it to the other planets in system. So this route, actually, once you get through the jump point, as long as you get through the jump point unscathed, is actually looking like it might be relatively safe, and even more safe if you buy into the idea that the pirates are going to be superstitious about the solar flares, because we know that. Let's zoom in. So there's the Pyro star. It's a main sequence dwarf K star. That's why the green band is smaller and inside more. But you can right click and then go to there. Oh, it doesn't give you the information. Oh, let's go back out. I think it's if you, there we go. So information on Pyro, we can see it's 13 AU across, unclaimed. So most of Pyro System's 6 planets are thoroughly scorched thanks to this flare star at its center. Flare star. We know that the planets aren't lifeless anymore. Some still are, but some aren't. Like Pyro 3 actually has a semi-breathable atmosphere. But some of this lore is semi-retcon, but some of it is still relevant. Upon its discovery in 2493, any valuable minerals were quickly mined, and its lack of habitable planets noted. And so I imagine I'd have to go back and look at the CitizenCon presentation, but I think they gave us a little bit of information about why more terraforming wasn't done to Pyro 3 in order to make it more habitable. I just remember them saying in that planet presentation that it has a breathable atmosphere, but it's like thin, it's habitable, but not by a lot. An orbital platform originally built by Pyrotechnic Amalgamated to serve as a hub for their operations in the system was only in use by the company for a short time before it was abandoned. Since then, the platform has become a refuge for black market traders and warring pirate gangs known as Ruin Station. So let's go back to our route. So you...
was more democratic and less oligarchical. So like getting rid of the citizenship system would be a big part of like that whole party. But
where is that?
Doesn't seem to be a big issue. The biggest issue that people lose their mind over is that they want to move the capital of Terra from Earth. And look, that's going to happen.
That's so weird. I was listening to Paul's recent Lore Citizen podcast that he did. Let's get back to that. Well, I was on my run earlier, and my phone randomly just started playing it through speaker. I was like, why do I hear Paul? That's weird. Anyway, so you are trying to get through Pyro as safely as possible. So but you need to get this job done. You need to get to Cascom quickly. Maybe there's a bonus for time, and you're going to take the short route versus the long route. You go through the Pyro to Stanton jump point. You go through the jump point to come out one of the non-main entrances where you're less likely to run into pirates. You're going to time, maybe you're going to loiter out here, or you're going to wait until a report comes back to Stanton that it was a single burst flare from the star, and now you're going to go on your journey. So single burst flare, you're like, okay, the pirates are going to be, the superstitious pirates are going to be in their hidey holes, and now I'm going to jump through from Stanton and make my jump across the next jump point, while the pirates are waiting for a better omen to go out and do some raiding. It's especially relevant because maybe, it's only pertinent to certain gangs. And this could just be information setting the tone that different gangs are going to have different superstitions that can impact your gameplay relative to them. Whether it's how you manage your reputation, whether it's, when you decide to cross Stanton or not. It could just be setting the tone, or it could be something relatively specific. But maybe the gang that controls the station that is closest to this jump point, because if Pyro 6 is over here, then I want to say it's the Pyro 3 or Pyro 6 L3 Lagrange point station, if there was one, would be over here, relatively close to the jump point. So maybe the gang that controls this station are the ones that are superstitious. And so maybe that, they're the ones that are patrolling around this jump point, raiding in from this jump point, and knowing that will give you an idea of, okay, when to time your hauling route, when to take this job, in order to make the most money, save the most time. But that's how that could play into it. because once you get into Nyx, then the jump from the Pyro Nyx jump point to the Nyx Castra jump point is only 5 AU. Essentially the distance across Stanton. And the green band right here is also largely a nebula that is basically interwoven with this glacium ring. This is the asteroid belt in the interior of Nyx versus the Keegar belt out here on the exterior. So if we click on the... will it not let me click on the glacium ring? No, I want to go in. It doesn't let me clicking on it, but the glacium ring has a nebula through it, in and around it. Essentially, it's we don't know if it's going to be like the gas clouds we've seen. We don't know if it's going to be more dense, how it's going to impact sensors. But the lore around it says that between with the nebula itself and the asteroid field, there's essentially it makes it a perfect place for pirates and smugglers to hide. Oops. And so not only are they hiding there, but you could also use this as cover in order to get through here relatively unscathed versus flying in open space, where your signals are going to transmit. You can't see them, but they also can't see you. But then you get into Castra, and the Castra Nyx jump point is on the interior of the system. But you still have to, because Castra is such a large system, it's still 15 AU here. But the total journey is 42 AU, but it's a lot less than 92 AU, and it should be relatively safer than trying to go through this jump point, which would be even longer anyway. So that is the lore equals gameplay for Booty Call Dumb Luck. That's how that segment about the pirate superstitions, particularly surrounding the burst flares, 1s and 2s in Pyro, could impact your gameplay as you are traversing the Pyro system. When do you traverse the Pyro system? When do you go in there? It could be very well be impacted by knowing whether what is going on in Pyro. If the star is a single burst or a single burst or a 2 burst. Maybe you're going into Pyro because you want to go mine in the Akiro cluster. The Akiro cluster, charred cluster of blackened asteroids, while mostly worthless, some rare materials can be found here. You're not going to find the density of mineable rocks in the Akiro cluster that you do, in the Air and Halo or the asteroid belt around Yella. But this suggests that there are more rare things and more valuable things to find there. So if you're looking for things that are harder to find, worth even more money, maybe this would be a good place to mine if you have some escorts. Maybe you can skimp on the escorts and save yourself some money if you traverse from the Pyro to Stanton jump point to the Akiro cluster when there's a single burst flare. There's another way that lore could equal gameplay or influence your gameplay when Pyro comes into the game. But yeah, that is it for Booty Call Dumb Luck lore equals gameplay. And if you're watching this later on YouTube, if you can give me a like and a subscribe, I would really appreciate it. This channel is just a hobby for me, but it's a hobby that I'm hoping will take off in that eventually I can get monetized, because my goal with the monetization is I want this to be a charity channel, both my Twitch and my YouTube, because I want to donate any proceeds I make to veterans charities, especially those that help veterans via gaming. Gaming and video games for me has been a key aspect of um, mitigating my own PTSD symptoms and helping me lead a normal and fulfilling life. And so I'm hoping that I can help give back to the veteran gaming community via this sort of thing. And I hope you enjoy it. So yeah, give me a like and a subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at tree03110311-SC. And also, if you are watching this later on YouTube, give me a follow on Twitch, and we will see you later. I'm going to be doing these things generally every week, not regularly because my schedule is irregular. I work 4 days on, 12 days off, and I commute 2 states away to do it. But keep an eye out in my Discord, which will be linked in the description below and is also in the about section of my Twitch. You can follow that link, join my Discord, join in the conversation. We have a good bunch of a good crowd in there, a very informed and fun to talk to people. But you can go in there, you can ask me questions, you can talk to Nazareth and I and ask us questions that you want answered for the Pathfinders podcast. But that is the hub of the community I am trying to develop. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.